In the city of Acadia, there was a woman named Madame Bimbo. She was no ordinary hairdresser. Her fame for creating stunning hairstyles had spread far and wide. Her salon was the talk of the town, a magical place where women from all walks of life came to transform their looks. What made Madame Bimbo unique wasn't just her unmatched skill but her speed. Hairstyles that typically took hours to make in other salons were completed in under an hour at her salon. Every braid, every twist was so precise that customers often joked it looked like she used a ruler. Along the walls of her shop were shelves lined with the most exquisite wigs anyone had ever seen. These weren't ordinary wigs. They were masterpieces. The wigs gleamed under the light, and the texture felt impossibly soft to the touch. When customers came to the salon to braid their hair, they couldn't resist the temptation of the wigs on display. They just had to buy one or more. "How do you do it, Madame Bimbo?" one woman asked, staring at a long, wavy wig that looked almost too perfect to be real. Madame Bimbo would always smile modestly. "It's all about passion and attention to detail. When you love what you do, it shows." Another customer said, "How much is that one? I need it for my sister's wedding." "That one is special," Madame Bimbo would reply with a smile. "It'll make you the star of the event." But there was one strange rule at Madame Bimbo's salon. There were no mirrors on the wall like other salons, because customers were not allowed to look at their hair until they left the salon. At first, this rule puzzled new visitors. "How will I know if I like the style?" one woman asked as she settled into a chair. Madame Bimbo smiled reassuringly. "You'll love it. Trust me." And without fail, every customer left thrilled. The compliments poured in before they even got to their homes, and the hairstyle lasted for weeks without losing its charm. Ife, a young lady who had recently moved to Acadia, heard about Madame Bimbo's salon from her friend Dammy. "Ife, you have to go there," Dammy said, twirling her perfect braids as they sat in a cafe. "I've never seen anything like it. My braid still looks this good after 2 weeks." Ife raised an eyebrow. "But no mirrors? That's strange." Dammy laughed. "It doesn't matter. Once you see your hair, you'll forget the rule. Trust me." Ife wasn't convinced. "What if I don't like it?" "What if?" "You will like it." Dammy interrupted. "Come on, Ife. Stop overthinking. You'll thank me later." A few weeks later, curiosity got the better of Ife, and she made her way to Madame Bimbo's salon. The queue inside the salon almost made her turn back, but the line moved surprisingly too fast. Inside, the air buzzed with chatter and the rhythmic sound of weaving hair. It got to Ife's turn in no time. "Good afternoon, my dear," Madame Bimbo greeted her warmly. "Come, sit down. Let's make you beautiful." Ife smiled and said, "Okay," sliding into the chair. "Relax," Madame Bimbo said with a reassuring smile. As soon as Madame Bimbo began, Ife was mesmerized. Her hands moved so quickly that Ife couldn't keep track of her fingers. "You're so fast," Ife said, unable to hide her amazement. "Speed is my gift," Madame Bimbo replied with a chuckle. "Wait until you see the result." True to her word, Madame Bimbo finished Ife's hair in record time. Ife touched her scalp tentatively, marveling at how neat and pain-free it felt. "Thank you so much," Ife said, paying for her service and stepping outside. On her way home, strangers stopped her. "Your hair is gorgeous," one woman exclaimed. "Where did you get it done?" another asked. By the time Ife reached home and finally looked in the mirror, she gasped. Her braids were perfect, shining under the light. She immediately called Dammy. "You were right," Ife said, practically shouting into the phone. "Madame Bimbo is amazing." Dammy laughed. "Told you. She's very good at what she does." Madame Bimbo's salon was more than just a place to get your hair done. It was a hub of excitement and chatter. From dawn till dusk, women flocked to her shop tucked in a bustling corner of Acadia. The women came in all shapes and sizes. Busy mothers seeking a quick transformation, career women hoping to dazzle at their next big meeting, and even brides to be preparing for their special day. No one left disappointed. The air was always thick with laughter and gossip. Conversations ranged from the latest Nollywood dramas to market prices, and sometimes, hushed whispers about Madame Bimbo herself. "She's a magician, I'm telling you," one woman whispered to another, eyes wide with admiration. "Look at my hair. It's like she braided it with her eyes closed." Another customer chimed in, her face glowing with excitement. "I came all the way from Ashidi because of her. My cousin swore by her skills, and now I see why." There was an unspoken camaraderie among the women. Even first-time visitors felt at home within minutes. The absence of mirrors didn't bother them anymore. Madame Bimbo's reputation spoke louder than any reflection ever could. The salon was fast-paced but organized. Madame Bimbo worked with the speed of lightning. Her assistants handed her combs, extensions, and pins, but none could match her skill. Every day ended the same way. Dozens of women leaving the salon with radiant smiles, eager to show off their new hairstyles. And every evening, Madame Bimbo would lock up the shop with a satisfied smile, knowing she had made a number of women look beautiful. But, as perfect as everything seemed on the surface, there was always a faint, lingering question in the back of some customers' minds. Why the no-mirror rule? Months later, after the compliments on her first hairstyle had faded and her braids had begun to loosen, Ife decided to return to Madame Bimbo's salon. This time, she arrived on a sunny afternoon, and as expected, the queue at the salon was long. Women chatted animatedly as they waited, some exchanging stories about their previous visits. Last time, I was in and out in 30 minutes, a woman bragged. Madame Bimbo is unbeatable, another chimed in. I don't know how she does it. Ife smiled as she took her place in line. Despite the crowd, the line moved quickly, and soon it was her turn. Ife, you're back, Madame Bimbo said warmly. Come, sit down. Ife settled into the chair, her excitement building. As Madame Bimbo began weaving her hair, Ife felt the familiar lightness of her touch. The rhythm of her hands was almost hypnotic. Halfway through, Ife suddenly felt an uncomfortable urge to use the restroom. She shifted in her seat before speaking. Madame Bimbo, can I use the restroom? She asked. Madame Bimbo paused. Of course, my dear. Inside the restroom, Ife washed her hands and prepared to return to her seat, but a thought struck her. She had never seen Madame Bimbo's work in progress before. She reached into her bag, pulled out her phone, and opened the camera. Just a peek, she muttered, curious to see how her hair was coming along. As the camera focused, Ife froze. Her hair, it was moving. Not the subtle swaying of a breeze or the shift of loose strands. No, the braids seemed to weave themselves, each strand twisting and locking into place as though invisible hands were at work. Her heart raced. She leaned closer to the screen, hoping her eyes were playing tricks on her. The hair moved again, faster this time, weaving itself with uncanny precision. A scream tore from her throat. Panic in the salon. Her scream echoed into the salon. Customers turned their heads toward the sound, alarmed. What's going on? One woman asked, clutching her handbag. Did someone fall? Another chimed in, rising from her seat. Madame Bimbo appeared at the corridor entrance, her face calm but her eyes sharp. What happened, Ife? She asked, her voice low and measured. Ife clutched her phone tightly, her mind racing. She couldn't possibly explain what she'd just seen. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Are you okay? Madame Bimbo stepped closer, her tone softening. I'm fine, Ife managed to say, forcing a smile. Just startled myself. Madame Bimbo's eyes narrowed slightly, but she didn't press further. Let's finish your hair, then. Ife returned to her seat, but she couldn't shake the feeling of unease. As Madame Bimbo resumed her work, her hands didn't move as swiftly as before. The rhythm was off, the touch slightly heavier. For the first time, Ife felt discomfort as the braids tightened against her scalp. Madame Bimbo, it's a little painful, she said cautiously. Madame Bimbo paused, her fingers trembling ever so slightly. Sorry, my dear. When Ife finally left the salon, the experience left her scared and nervous. She called Dammy as soon as she got home. Dammy, something weird happened today, she began. Don't tell me you're complaining about Madame Bimbo's work. Dammy teased. No, the hair is fine. It's just, Ife hesitated. Should she tell Dammy about the moving hair? What if it was my imagination? She thought to herself. Just what? Dammy pressed. If I tell you, you'll think I'm crazy, Ife said, pacing her room. Try me. Ife took a deep breath and recounted everything. The moving braids, Madame Bimbo's strange reaction, and how the whole experience felt off. Dammy was silent for a moment. Then she spoke, her voice hushed. Ife, you're not the first person to say something strange about that salon. What do you mean? Ife asked, her heart skipping a beat. There are rumors, Dammy admitted. Nothing solid, but people talk. Some say Madame Bimbo has help. Help. Not the human kind, Dammy whispered. Ife's stomach churned. That's ridiculous. Maybe, Dammy said, but don't you think we should find out for sure? Over the next few weeks, Ife and Dammy began digging into Madame Bimbo's past. They visited other salons, talked to former employees, and even spoke to some of her old customers. She wasn't always this fast, an older woman told them one afternoon. I remember when she started. She was good, but not like this. Another woman added, they say a strange woman visited her years ago and gave her something. No one knows what it was, but after that, everything changed. The pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, and the picture they painted was disturbing. Ife and Dammy realized they needed to confront Madame Bimbo, but before they could, something even stranger happened. One day, Dammy called Ife in a panic. I just passed by Madame Bimbo's salon, Dammy said, her voice frantic. Okay, and? She looked tired, and her hands, Ife, they were swollen, and the usual crowd was not there. Here were just a few people. Ife's mind raced. Something was happening to Madame Bimbo, and whatever it was, it had to be connected to the strange events at her salon. Dammy, Ife said, her voice firm, we need to talk to her, before it's too late. The tension builds as Ife and Dammy prepare to uncover the truth about Madame Bimbo's secret. Little do they know, the answers they seek will change everything they thought they knew about the woman behind the magic. Word spread fast about Madame Bimbo's salon like wildfire. People could connect the line. Madame Bimbo's hands began to swell after a lady looked at her hair in the salon. This was what's speculated. I thought she was just naturally gifted, one woman said. Only God knows what spell she had cast on us, another said. Fear gripped everyone. Ife and Dammy decided to visit Madame Bimbo the following day. The salon was quieter than usual. Madame Bimbo was seated alone in her once busy salon, her hands swollen and inflamed. When she saw Ife and Dammy, her eyes flickered with recognition and something else. Was it fear? Ife, Dammy, she said weakly. You've come back. Sit, sit. Ife shook her head. We're not here to make our hair today, Madame Bimbo. Madame Bimbo's smile faltered. Oh, then why are you here? Dammy stepped forward. We need to talk to you. What is it you want to talk about? She asked, her voice guarded. Ife didn't mince words. What's happening to you, Madame Bimbo? And what exactly is going on in this salon? Madame Bimbo's eyes widened. What do you mean? You know what we mean, Dammy pressed. Your hands are swollen. You're not as fast as you used to be. People are noticing. Something is wrong. Madame Bimbo looked up sharply, fear flashing across her face. For a moment, she seemed on the verge of denying everything. But then her expression crumbled. Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't mean for it to happen like this, she whispered. Dammy and Ife exchanged a glance. What happened? Ife asked gently. Madame Bimbo began her story, her voice trembling with emotion. Years ago, I was young, just an ordinary hairdresser. I was good, but there were so many salons in this area. It was hard to stand out. I was barely making enough to survive. She paused. One day, a woman came into my shop. She was older, elegant, and strange. She told me I had potential, that I could be greater than I ever imagined. At first, I didn't take her seriously, but she insisted. What did she do? Dammy asked, her voice tight with anticipation. She handed me a small vial of oil, Madame Bimbo continued. She said it would change everything, but there was a condition. No mirrors in the salon. Ever. No one must ever see their reflection whilst in the salon. I didn't understand why, but I was young and desperate. I agreed. And it worked? Ife prompted. Madame Bimbo nodded. Oh, it worked. The next day, my hands moved like they had a life of their own. I could do in minutes what used to take hours. Customers came flooding in. I didn't question it. I didn't want to. But now it's backfiring, Dammy said, glancing at Madame Bimbo's swollen hands. Yes, Madame Bimbo admitted. The woman warned me that if anyone broke the rule, there would be consequences. When you looked at your hair through your phone's camera, Ife, it broke the spell. Ife gasped. So this is my fault? No. Madame Bimbo said quickly. It's not your fault. I was foolish to accept her offer in the first place. Now I'm paying the price. What happened to the woman who gave you the oil? Dammy asked. I don't know, Madame Bimbo said. I never saw her again after that day. I thought about trying to find her, but I was scared. If you don't do something, this will only get worse, Ife said firmly. Have you sought help? Doctors? Madame Bimbo shook her head. I've been too ashamed. What if they find out what I did? People will hate me. People might hate you, yes, Dammy said bluntly. But this isn't just about your reputation anymore. Your hands are rotting, Madame Bimbo. You need help. Madame Bimbo broke down in tears. What can I do? That evening, Ife and Dammy accompanied Madame Bimbo to a nearby hospital. The doctors were shocked they haven't seen anything like this before. But they admitted Madame Bimbo to see if they could help remedy the situation. Medications and ointments didn't really do much to help the situation. While at the hospital, Madame Bimbo hated herself. She was in so much pain. The pain meds didn't do much. She regretted all she had done. She felt so bad for naively accepting the offer of that elderly woman years ago. She felt life was over for her. But something happened. One faithful day, some pastors visited the hospital to pray with the patients. Bimbo sat on her bed and watched them until it got to her turn. "Madam, what is the issue?" the younger pastor asked, standing close to her bedside. Without hesitation and tears flooding Bimbo's eyes, she said, "I didn't know what I was getting into," she sobbed. "I just wanted to succeed. I was young, naive, and innocent. Now I am facing the consequences of my actions." She told the pastors everything, and they listened to her attentively. One of the pastors, an elderly man with kind eyes, placed a hand on her shoulder. "God is merciful, Madame Bimbo. If you truly repent and turn away from your old ways, he will forgive you." They prayed for hours, Madame Bimbo weeping openly as she poured out her heart. For the first time in years, she felt a glimmer of hope. The prayers from the pastors marked the beginning of a profound transformation for Madame Bimbo. That night, as she lay in her hospital bed, she felt something she hadn't experienced in weeks: relief. The constant, searing pain in her hands began to dull. It wasn't entirely gone, but it was different, gentler. The next morning, the swelling in her fingers had reduced noticeably. Where her skin had been tight and inflamed, there was now a faint glow of normalcy returning. The nurses were the first to notice. "Madame Bimbo," one said, peering closely at her hands, "this is incredible. Your wounds, they're closing up." She held up her hands, examining them herself. The dark, rotting patches on her skin were fading, replaced by healthy flesh. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, "Thank you, God." Over the following days, Madame Bimbo's recovery stunned the doctors. "It doesn't make sense," one of them said during his rounds. "We've never seen anything like this before. The healing process is accelerating at an unnatural rate." Another doctor chimed in, flipping through her medical file. "Her condition was deteriorating just last week. This kind of reversal, it's unheard of." Dammy and Ife made it a point of duty to visit Madame Bimbo in the hospital as regularly as they could. They were amazed at how fast she was recovering. Bimbo couldn't help but tell them about the visit of the pastors. The pastors who had prayed for Madame Bimbo continued to visit her regularly. Each time they came, they prayed fervently, anointing her hands with oil and speaking words of encouragement. "You must remember, Madame Bimbo," one of them said gently, "God's mercy is not just about healing your body. It's about healing your soul too. Let this be a chance to start anew." Madame Bimbo nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I will never go back to my old ways. I promise." After a week of steady improvement, Madame Bimbo's hands were almost completely healed. The discolored patches were gone, and the swelling had reduced to the point where she could flex her fingers without pain. The hospital staff were in awe. One of the senior doctors admitted, "We've done all we can, but this recovery, it's beyond science. It's a miracle." Madame Bimbo's heart swelled with gratitude. She felt lighter, as though a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. For the first time in years, she felt free. As she prepared for discharge, the pastors gathered around her one final time. "Madame Bimbo," the eldest pastor said, "God has given you a second chance. Use it wisely. Go out and live a life that glorifies him." She nodded earnestly. "I will. Thank you for helping me find my way back." When she left the hospital, her hands were no longer the magical tools they had once been, but she didn't mind. They were hers, whole, healthy, and a symbol of her redemption. Eventually, Madame Bimbo decided to close her salon and leave Acacia. "I need a fresh start," she told Ife and Dammy. They helped her pack up her things and bid her farewell, wishing her the best in her new life. In a small town far from the busy streets of Acacia, Madame Bimbo opened a modest salon. This time, she worked without shortcuts or secrets. You could look at the mirror while she made your hair. In fact, there was a huge mirror on the wall. Her hands, though slower than before, created hairstyles with care and precision. Over time, customers began to trust her again, and her new salon flourished. Madame Bimbo found peace in her work, knowing she had left her past behind. And though the memories of her old life lingered, she vowed never to stray from the path of honesty again. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this story interesting, click on the subscribe button. See you in the next story.